Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Ms. Abrams, and one of the things that's good about this, and I'm glad you're here, in 2011, back in a different time and a different world for both of us, you voted in favor of a bill to reduce early voting period to 3 weeks and add a Saturday, correct?
Correct.
House Bill 92, and I'll enter that into the record. It was been stated earlier by the chairman of this committee.
Without objection.
Thank you. The chairman of this committee that restricting earlier votings actually had a disproportionate impact on minority voters. I know that was very much of a concern for you at the time, and you and Representative Mark Hamilton had those conversations, and it was showed that there was either no difference in participation or actually there was at least a benefit to minority voters at that time. Would you agree with that statement?
I would agree, but I believe it's important to clarify. Georgia at the time had an outsized number of early voting days, 45 early voting days. The national standard, the gold standard, was 21 days. Therefore, what Georgia did by reducing from 45 to 21 days was to come into conformity with the most appreciated and most accepted role for early voting.
Exactly.
However, since that time, there were multiple opportunities, multiple attempts made in the Georgia General Assembly to actually restrict from 21 to 7 days, and I vigorously opposed every one of those bills and fought them back.
That is right. Reclaiming my time, I was not there. We were there on this one, and I think the interesting issue is the point that I'm making, is that when you do carefully calculated that was to the norm, there was not a discriminatory fact, and statements of broad impact can't be used all the time because it leads to bad decisions when you blanketly say something affects in a disproportionate way. You just admitted, I've just saw, and we've had the bill passed, that in that 3-week period, which was part of what was actually said by our chairman, it did not do that. A 7-day, we could probably agree on, but in that part, it did not. So you can't blanketly say bringing back earlier voting does that. Another issue that has come to mind, and I have a question, I'm glad you said it in the previous witness, you said that there are reasons to keep a voter roll accurate. The question, though, is you come into this process, you stated something earlier about exact match that I'm not sure we actually, I want to make sure that we're clear on. And let's just go a couple of yes, no's. 1.4 million were purged. You said that, it's in your written testimony. Do you believe all of those were purged for wrong reasons? Yes or no?
Of course not.
Okay. Look at that. The question you also said among the exact match and the 53,000 voter registration that was used, as you put in your thing, was held hostage. The question and you said that it's because of government bureaucrats or government workers who mistakenly put information in, and that's the only reason you've given that these exact match doesn't work. Is it not true that, however, the person who is actually inputting information has to have accurate information to put in so that it is accurate? Would that be a fair statement?
I do not believe that fairly characterizes the
challenges. So you do not believe that a statement, something is given, if I filled out a form and it was half filled out, or I did not put my last name, or I did not put my date of birth, or I did not put an address, is that a form that can be actually used by a local voter registrar to actually fill out a form that would do an exact match? Yes or no?
Sir, it's impossible to provide a yes or no answer to that question because the exact match is not simply the question of what was put on the form. The challenge with exact match is not the entry on the form, it's the database that's then used to verify the access to that information. And so absent the second part of the process, it is an impossibility to give a truthful answer to the question presented.
But the truthful answer, and you're still as good as I remember you, the issue here is, though, is not this. If it is not right for the exact match to match what they need to match for verification process, if I turned it in, still did not match it up, it was my input onto the form or the person collecting or the group collecting this that did not turn in a form that a person in the voter registration office could actually use to do exact match, not what they were matching to, but if I did not give them proper match, then that is the problem. There's at least got to be the understanding it's not just a government data input problem and we're not throwing all voter registration people under the bus with this. I think that's the problem that I have in your answer because it implies a governmental problem, which also goes back to a bigger issue that I have here. And that is the implication that Brian Kemp, the governor of the state of Georgia, is the person behind all of the problems here. And this has become a bigger question for the state that you and I love. When you had a former presidential or current presidential candidate come to Georgia and make a statement in your defense and basically said that Stacey Abrams will be governor of Georgia if Georgia wasn't racist. I don't think that's what you want Georgia to be looked at, and I don't think that's what I wanted. And I've actually talked to this individual. The question that his problem is making sure that we have accurate voter rolls, even by your group's administration, making sure that our accurate voter rolls are there, and that people have a possibility of doing that. The question, though, that one last question that I have in here, and we could go on, but I know you've got a flight, and I will see you again, hopefully under different circumstances. But one question bugged me from the whole time, and I watched it. There was a clip and you said it even afterwards, when we're talking about our voter rolls being there for every person, every citizen, do you believe that non-citizens should vote in the state of Georgia?
No, and I have never said that non-citizens should be allowed to vote.
What did you say, by the way?
What I said was that the blue wave, which was not a reference to the right to vote, but a reference to the resistance of this administration's policies that have disenfranchised, dehumanized, and harmed the ability for people in the United States of America to fully exercise their rights and freedoms, that the change that would come, which is euphemistically referred to as the blue wave, would be achieved by people who are both documented and undocumented. That did not refer to, and in fact, it has been proven through a PolitiFact analysis, I never once called for anyone who is not legally eligible to vote to be able to do so. And I would refer you to our long tenure together, where I worked with Democrats and Republicans to always ensure the integrity of the right to vote. It has been my practice as an adult since my time in college, and with due respect, the reality is that we as a nation stand as an emblem of what democracy can mean, and that is diminished when there are irregularities, when there are malfeasance and misfeasance activities that undermine the right to vote. And that's what I've called attention to, and that's the work that I'm doing.
And that is exactly what the problem is when we have the far, even from groups taking, when the
And our
stuff
time is
is
up.
not actually done.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.